and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
In the Bible, Israel is overcome. That's one important thing people have to understand. Jerusalem is going to be trampled underfoot. Jesus gave specific instructions. Those in Judea should flee into the mountains and not go back and to take anything out of the house. So what does this mean? We're going to see that. That's going to happen that's not going to take long to take place. Now also, when Jerusalem is trampled underfoot, it's going to draw out a lot of individuals who can't stand that place. You're going to hear it with your ears. You have to settle it within your minds now that you have to maintain yourself during that time. But understand this, when you read Revelation, when you're looking at prophecy, the Lord is going to allow all of this to take place. In fact, it was God Himself who made several declarations. You hear terms in the Bible like the Lord said, I will bring evil upon thee. That's all throughout the Word of God. He'll bring the land to its desolate state. He'll do that. That He would bring 7 times more plagues. The Lord said these things. Why would He allow it to happen? Well, I want you to think about the Lord's way of correction, how He corrects. If you can understand how God corrects, you'll understand prophecy and why this has to happen, why it must happen. It will most certainly happen. And it seems like nothing has power to stop it, and it doesn't. Because if God enables it, it's going to take place. People will see it. In your own life, with every problem that you've had that was major, for the most part, when the problem began, first of all, it blindsided you. It was something you weren't quite prepared for. But in the beginning, you were given a warning. How much you guys really think about this? Before your problem took place, the Lord warned you not to go that direction. It was very subtle. And all too often, we get sidetracked through prosperity, through goals, whatever the case is. We get sidetracked thinking it'll be no big deal, sometimes not thinking at all. And then we find ourselves in this problem, in this situation. We say, what happened? When we're in the middle of that trouble, that's when we sober up. So that's the first thing. When the problem hits its height, when it's in that stage where it's absolutely taken over, we stop acting silly. We stop throwing things to the side. We stop putting things off, and we recognize the problem. As soon as that problem hits, especially when you can't point your finger and blame anyone, you begin to think soberly. Well, you'll stay in that stage for a while because it's almost like shock. And then later on, when the problem persists and it gets even worse and everybody fails to get you out of that problem and every attempt that you have made also failed, what do we end up doing? As a last resort, we say, Lord, please help me. If you don't help me, I'm a goner. Isn't that what we do? So it gets so bad that we're forced to recognize that we have no power to do anything about it. In fact, it often surprises people that they don't have an ability to take care of it, because sometimes you think you can take care of it. You say, well, that's no big deal. I'll take care of that later. And it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse until you hit the point where you can't do anything about it, right? Now, if you're in one of those advanced problems, that means you had some prior. That's when you find out this could potentially hurt some other people. That's when your heart breaks. This could affect other people. People who had nothing to do with the issue, that's when you start to repent. So it brings repentance because you're looking at an issue. You have no time for childish behavior. It's an emergency. And so you become quite sober. That's why people get so tired. They get so tired because they're in a mind that's sober for so long with no playing, no none of that. They're just very sober. And then this thing gets so bad, you still can't do anything about it. All attempts have failed, and it starts to go over the edge, and you're still praying. Well, you even take that further. You wake up one day and you say, you know what? I've got to start living my life in accordance with truth. Had I not, Lord, and then we start confessing, don't we? I was not in your word like I said I would be, and I did. I said I would be in his word, and I just didn't do it. So we start thinking up things as to why God would allow this to happen. And we go through this self-correction technique that we often utilize, and we say, well, I'm the one that drifted away from the Lord. We repent. We begin to recognize what we've actually done. Isn't that funny? At the crescendo, the height of your problem, you start to confess what you've done. Now, prior to that, you did nothing. You didn't do anything wrong to deserve that. But when it's at its height, you begin to see what you have actually done. You start telling the truth. You start repenting based on truth. That's when that deliverance moment comes. Your problem doesn't go away. But what the Lord does so that problem won't take you over the edge is He grants you encouragement. And if you're in one of those advanced issues, your requirements are going to be a bit higher, do some other things. In other words, you start purifying yourself. Then you start taking inventory of your life. It's so funny because you'll have a problem that has nothing to do with life and you'll think your life is over. And because of that, you'll start going over your whole life. You'll start seeing what needs to be changed. Consequently, during this time, that's when you're closest to the Messiah. That's when you actually begin to see what adjustments you can make. That's when the Lord brings to mind those things that you have overlooked. That's also when we feel incredibly sorrowful inside. We say, wow, I truly messed this up. Isn't that funny? We try to find somebody to blame it on first. Then we end up seeing what we did, what we were complicit with, how we allowed the situation to grow, that God did actually warn us and we just ignored it. And so there's a cleansing process. After we have come to terms, after we have submitted, the problem's still going, another stage hits. It's part of your sincerity stage, I'll call it. Because a lot of people say, well, Lord, you take care of this problem. They'll make a deal with the Lord. They do. Lord, if you do this, I'll do this. That's in the early problems. We find out that doesn't work at all. But in one of these more advanced issues, eating, spending more time with the Lord, this, that, and the other, and then something amazing happens. You know what happens? That's very amazing. Your pride goes out of the window because other people can see your issue. Those are in it, your advanced problems. All the time does not take place in the smaller problems. So yes, that means we have to have many different issues in our lives to get to the advanced stage of a problem. When you get to the advanced stage, everybody else knows about it. In that same moment, when everybody knows about it, now, some of you who have not had a lot of problems may not understand this. That's when freedom comes. When everybody knows about it and everybody starts to see you in a specific light, you'll say, it's gone. It's gone. I don't have to deal with it anymore. They already know, here it is. And so a type of honesty is settled into you. Now, all this while, God has been operating, doing surgery, very important surgery, getting things out of you that shouldn't have been there. He's repairing you through your problem. We don't perceive that all the time because we're so overwhelmed with it. We step into this realm of honesty. We begin to present to people who we actually are and say, well, this is what you get. This is what you get. In that type of freedom, when a person knows what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that, yes, you have flaws too, pride goes away and everything else, all of a sudden you're free. Then something even more amazing happens. Your problem is still ongoing. You don't know if it's going to be solved or not, but you begin to establish a relationship with the Lord despite the issue. This is an advanced issue. And so you say, you know what, Lord, I'm going to serve you no matter what. No matter if this problem continues or not, I'm doing this for you. And your relationship with the Lord in that moment is solidified. You're not asking Him to remove the problem. You see the truth behind the issue. You all of a sudden realize you're not innocent, but then your sincerity towards Christ, it really grows. And then when you say, Lord, I'm going to serve you anyway, and you start reading your Bibles in the mornings, the problem is still happening, the Lord takes care of the issue somehow. You don't know how. You don't know how He does it because it's probably not clear all the steps that took place, but He takes that issue and it becomes healing in your life. He uncovers what no one had power to uncover. He deals with what nobody had power to deal with. And your sincerity level goes way up there. And the moment you commit yourself to the Most High, when you still have the problem, in other words, you're saying in your heart, Lord, I don't care what comes. I want my relationship with you and thank you. Now you're being sober. Now you're no longer afraid of the issue because that cat's out of the bag. So you're kind of free of that. And believe it or not, step by step, you have freedom. Pride is gone. You're not covering up things, all this other stuff. And then you can really see this clear path with the Lord to the rest of your life. And it's so amazing that only in your problem can you begin to see who you are. Isn't that something? It's almost impossible to see who you are outside of one of these problems. In those, when you're having that issue, the Lord will bring things to your mind that you will not get at any other time. You can only find these things inside of your own problem, your own turmoil, your own situation. There are advanced stages to problems. just like surgery. The doctor goes in at one point, he gets things prepped, you go scot-free thinking everything is okay, and he says, up, back to the table. We got to do more surgery. He'll fix up some more things, right? That heals, and you're bouncing around because you don't have that problem anymore. Likely go back into the same stuff again. He's, oh, you're not done. Now we're going to remove the big thing. So all throughout your life, you have these issues and problems. And if you take careful note of what he's been doing, he's been working in the same area this entire time. And every single time you go to the table, you have an encounter with him. The first couple times, you don't want that encounter with the Lord. You can tell he's close, but you want to have that solved your way. You get nervous, your world's falling apart, and everything else. Stage by stage, deliverance is happening. The end of one of those advanced problems. You come out on the other end, you're different. You're not the person you used to be, but you are the person going towards what you are destined to be. So what the Lord does in the surgery is he removes the world from you. All these worldly things that we grafted into ourselves, he removes it. If you're going to be grafted into the branch, do you really think he wants false materials on you? No, he does not. He doesn't want any false materials on you. So he gets those materials out, right? We don't know what's happening in those problems, but if you also take note, many of you have sinned against yourselves. You've sinned against yourselves, but there's a line you can't cross. Isn't that funny? You can beat yourself up. You do things to yourself all the time, but I can almost guarantee you that you have not done too much when it comes to other people. That you can't really go over that line. You have to really be in bad shape to go over that line, because that line is a line you're not willing to cross. Even if you do it accidentally, you're still not willing to do that. You don't like to do anything against anybody else, but for some odd reason, you keep tearing yourself up. But all of it's designed. It is. God's process is the same for nations. For nations, they build up pride within themselves, right? In every single nation, with every single speech, what do you hear? You hear people say, this is what we have done. This is what I have done. That's what they say. Why? Because they're full of pride. Well, collectively, nations must go through problems. And when they go through those problems, like the one we're about to go through, and nobody else can solve it, when they come out on the other end with a nation, when the bad parts have to be removed, only then is the nation free. Why do you think the establishment or rebirth of a nation is so difficult in the first place? God's process is the same between your deliverance and the deliverance of his people. Same thing happened to Israel. Look at Israel. They came from Egypt, right? They were in Egypt. They were slaves. They knew they were slaves. They wanted to be delivered, but they were slaves. Many of them thought, hey, we're going to be delivered since we've been slaves. We're going to go straight to a good place, and wow, that's it. Wrong. Because when they were delivered out of the place of bondage, they still had hearts of bondage from the place they were released from. Many of you have been delivered, but you still have a heart of bondage, which means in your heart rests all those issues from the place you've been delivered from. If you keep that, you'll go back into bondage again, because it becomes home to you, becomes comfortable to you. That has to be foreign to you. You have to actually see that for what it is, and that's very painful. It's very painful to see something you liked so much. It's very painful to see it as evil. Nobody wants to do. You don't want to see that person that you liked so much and see them for what they really are, and turns out they're evil. That's not what you want to see. But that heart of bondage, you know what it does? A heart of bondage will make you see your own problem forming, and that heart of bondage will say, oh, well, I'm stuck anyway, so it's no big deal. Let me go ahead and do this sin. Let me go ahead and do this. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and do this. God's deliverance of his own people, he had to take them out into the wilderness. Why? Because as a whole, they still had this ideology that they were better off enslaved than they were following the living God in places they didn't know. So what was the key thing there? They complained because they had no idea where they were going. At least in Egypt, they said, we knew what we were doing. We knew where we were going. Conditions were awful. People were dying. They were beaten and whooped and everything else. But at least we had an expectancy of what to expect the next day. They had to complain every single day, their own provision, because they did not know how to rely upon the living God. Just like we did not know how to rely upon the living God, just like often we don't know how to rely upon the living God. That's why I know if the mark of the beast were to come out right now, people would take it. You may say with your mouth, I'm not going to take it, but are you really used to living your life dependent upon the living God and nothing else? The truth is, no, we're not. When you're no longer dependent, the world can never cause you fear again. Importantly, the world can never make you worry again. Then that heart of bondage is gone. When people were in the world, they get worried about how people would look at them. Well, I'm worried about how people see me. This, that, and the other. The Lord has his standard, his way. Now, in the book of Daniel, he tells us what he's going to do to Israel. He shows us how he's going to deliver them. They're going to be trampled underfoot, yes. Many will be in bondage, yes. But why did he told us why he would do that. After they pollute the sanctuary of strength, and this thing comes in and corrupts everybody, he said, to what? And some of them, he said, and such as do wickedly against the holy covenant shall he corrupt with flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong to exploits, and they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Yet they shall fall by the sword, by flame, by captivity, by spoil, many days. He said, now they're gonna fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. For what reason? When they fall, people are going to come to them, do anything, just like people have done to us in our issues. You know how people say, hey, if you need anything, you give me a call. Here's what you do. Next time somebody says that, say, well, I'll tell you what, help me right now. They'll say, oh, no, I didn't mean right now, later on. I can't help you right now. That's the truth of it. Right? That's why I never tell people that. If you need something, you give me a call. I never will I say that unless I'm prepared right there at that moment to do something right there. I'm prepared right there to do it if I say that. I will never use that statement if I'm not, because you know what? There are times in people's lives where they need help. And because somebody said that, they really think, that person may be able to help out. Come to find out, they're not able to help you. Or they're too busy, too tied up. Things like that, saying things they don't mean. And when it comes to a problem, we can never do that. That's a false help. We can't do that. That's flattery through words. That's telling somebody something exactly they want to hear, right? Something that comforts them for that moment. But in truth, people are not willing to do too much. That's why I never do that. Never do that. Now, God says when Israel is in bondage again, that people will do the same to them. They're going to be helped with little help. And it said people will cleave to them with flatteries. In other words, people are going to get close to them. It's like going up to a prison cell saying, you know what? Our attorneys are working pretty hard. The firm is working hard. We're going to get you out of here. Okay? And then they go away. You don't see them again until another year. They come back next year. Hey, we're doing all we can. We're setting up an appointment to review your case, and we're working really hard to get you out of here. And then they come back 3 more years later. Listen, we're going to do what and that's at that point you say, don't come back here. Don't do it. But God says people will do that to his people, that people will come and cleave to them with flatteries. Now listen to this. He said that after they fall and all these different things, and this thing has taken power, God said he's going to do this to purge them. Listen to this. And some of them understanding shall fall. Listen, to try them, to purge them, to make them light, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for an appointed time. He does the same thing to us in problems. What does he do in our issues? He purges us. He tries. Remember, in the Bible, our faith is going to be tried. That's an established fact. That's why we glory in tribulation. You don't run from tribulation. You glory in tribulation. But why? Because God is working. He's doing surgery on you. He's making a change, a notable change. Nothing else can make that change except the problem that comes upon you by the Most High. He's the one that has to authorize it. So never think that your problems are just some sort of happenstance. No, it isn't. The people who are involved in your problem were cultivated for generations, just so you can have that problem. Everything had to be set up just perfectly. Even the people at the various companies, they had to take that position so that they would move in the right way so you would have that problem. Your problem has been designed to free you. Absolutely. Because God does what? He purges us. He tries us. And he cleanses us. Isn't that awesome? Never forget that you belong to the Most High. You're bought with a price. Do you really think God would take something he paid a high price for and just toss it in the floor? He's not like us. You better believe that when you go into a process, the host of heaven is watching that process, and the outcome is going to be just as God decreed it to be, and that nothing is out of control, and Satan will never exact more than God gives him to exact, which just so happens to be less than what you're able to fend off. So never think of happenstance. Things with you are not random. Everything with you is supernaturally designed. You mean more to the Most High than his creation. Now, I hope you know that. So you're not going to so much as get a scratch without it being decreed first. Every time you stubbed your toe, something had to be set up for that to happen. All of your situations are monitored because you mean everything to the Most High. You mean everything to Him. You remember when Jesus said, Father, if possible, that quick, He said, nevertheless, thy will be done. He didn't say, no, let me just take that back. Let me go ahead and do it. Nope. He was telling us that that cup was heavy. He was in the flesh. It says in the Bible that Jesus was tempted in all points as we are, but without sin. When He said, can you take this cup from me? He understood what He was about to go through. And fear was a great part of it. Christ walked away from that one. Price for us. Beginning, that's why He said, let us make man after our image, after our likeness. Well, it was a bunch of aliens standing up there. No, stop. People shouldn't put God in a box like that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, the Word was God. So we know who the Lord was with at that time. The Lord was with Christ. He was there the entire time for that specific cause. Nothing was made without Him. So through Christ, creation exists. He served your sentence. He served your sentence. That's why it can never be undone. He served your sentence. He descended into Sheol, Jesus did. He served your sentence. You know, I had a thought when I first really thought about this. I had one thought. Imagine me having to be separated from the Father because of my sins. How could somebody take that? Well, imagine Jesus going to the cross. He's in pain, but instead of, they hit Him one time with a whip, instead of Him feeling it for one person, He felt it for everybody who would ever exist. That's the first thing. Now, but imagine this. Imagine when He actually died on the cross and when He went into hell, it's not for the living God. A day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years as a day. You know what that is? That's a 1-to-1 ratio. That means time means nothing to the Most High. And a few seconds could be an eternity. Can you imagine if Jesus served an eternity in hell for you and I already? Which is why Satan can't do a thing, because Jesus has already been there and He paid the full price. He paid the price in full. Imagine that. He's satisfied it. And why does the Bible continue to say Jesus satisfied the law? And if He already paid that price, He was already punished. He stood in our place. Think about this. That means for your life, He served an eternity in hell for you. For every sin you would commit, He already took on the punishment. Now, if you have knowledge of that, how in the world can anybody, knowing an innocent person took their place willingly and served a full sentence for them, how could that person go out and do any crime? If you never knew that story, you could go and do everything. But if you knew that story, that would kind of hinder you in life, because you would think of that innocent one who paid the price instead of you, who suffered separation from the living God. Remember when He said, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? You can only say that through a separation from the living God. So He was indeed separated on times, right? Forgetting that time does not exist in the spiritual realm. If He satisfied everything, and He did pay the price, no wonder a person can repent at any time. And if they are sincere, they're brought into the fold, and their sins are forgiven them. Jesus knows exactly what He did. He knows what He did. But if you have knowledge of that, knowing He served that sentence in hell for you and I, you can't easily just go back into the world and sin freely, can you? Somebody asked me one time, they said, how do you keep from sinning? Here's how we look at sin in the beginning. Just briefly, we say, oh, it's so hard to be righteous because you can't do this and you can't do that. Nope, that's the wrong way to look at it. You ready? If one of you got caught because you murdered someone, and I showed up at the court, and I didn't murder anybody, but I said, listen, I know this guy, so I'll serve his life sentence, let him go free. And they actually agreed to it. You know what would happen? You would go out of that courtroom saying, well, Mike didn't do anything. How could he just take on my punishment? I know I did it, but he didn't do anything. It'd likely break your heart. You'd feel guilty and everything else. You would have no desire to go into the world and murder again. If you have an ounce of good in you, you would not have a desire to go into the world and murder again. And see, because I know Jesus paid the price in full for me, I have no appetite for sin. Does that make sense? He didn't deserve to take my place. I know who I am. Nobody should take my place, but He already did that, and I can't do anything about it. And when you understand that, you lose your appetite for sin. And if you have no appetite for sin, you're not going back into sin. You're not going to just willfully go back into sin. You're not going to willfully do that. You're not going to willfully go do something to someone else because you're thinking about Christ. And it'll break your heart every single day that he paid that price in full. In fact, I believe if you think of that, a part of you is going to be broken until you're put back together in eternity. We're drawn away and tempted of our own lust, which means when we enter into that sinful state, it's because we have an appetite for it. To know that the Lord paid your price in full by taking your place, he took on your punishment, you're not going to have an appetite for the sinful things. And if you do sin, guess what you'll do? Lord, forgive me instantly. You'll not spend your time wronging anybody. You may be accused of everything, but you will not wrong a person. It's a lot you're going to get away from because you're mindful that the Lord paid that price in full for you and for me. The biggest thing is, it's time for people to believe that upon themselves. Collectively, people believe it because if you have breath today, if you believe in Christ right now, he did that for you. He paid the price you were supposed to pay. You already know what you did. I know what I did. And he paid that price for you and I for free. He didn't require anything of us. So who, upon knowing that, who would not honor him by saying no to sin? At that point, sin is no longer a desire. You may have an addiction. You may have a habit. The next time you're on the internet, think about Jesus paying the price of those who committed adultery because God said don't do it. And we did so anyway, having adultery in our hearts, having lust in our minds and eyes and everything else. The Lord said if you think about another person, you've committed adultery in your heart already. Think about that. He paid the price for that. Anything that will separate you from the Most High. Now, if you know who you are, and if you really understand that you deserve whatever's coming to you, you're going to have a desire for sin. When something happens to me, the one thing I never say is, I don't deserve this. I have never said I deserve better because I don't deserve better. I deserve death. That's what I deserve. I deserve death. Satan didn't trick me. You have to agree to sin, not sin of itself. We have to agree with it. I know exactly who I was. And Jesus, he paid that price for me. I cannot easily go out and commit. I'm not going to commit it. First of all, I have no appetite for it. I have no appetite for it. Or whatever you want, but I have no appetite for things. And if I do happen to slip or something like you better believe, I'm going to take it to the Lord. Now, I have no problem describing to people exactly who I used to be. I'm here solely because the Lord loved me first. I was born dead. I was less than what they say. I was less than a Coke can. That's how much I weighed. Less than a Coke. You could see right through my skin. Underdeveloped intestines, underdeveloped lungs. And back then, they didn't have too many machines. So that's when you bring the funeral people in. Nothing would fit my mouth. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you were sent here. You were sent here to be exactly what God has decreed you to be. You have a yearning in the depths of your heart. And I'll tell you something right now. What you really desire is in fact the will of God for your life, that you may not have found the fullness of it yet. That's why you have such joy when you do something good for somebody else. There's something that you do in line with the will of God that you have great joy, that return from. Yes, you have sin in your life. No, you've not done things right. This, that, and the other. Jimmy cracked corn. Today is a brand new day by way of the heart. Something that money will never give. Something that a book cannot depart. But only something you receive when you're in line with the, when you have done that specific thing only you knew about. And you did some good to somebody else. A return actually came from that. See, I found mine. I've been chasing that ever since. And when it hit me, I said, my goodness, there it is. That's what I want. When I was able to help someone and nobody knew it was, listen, not a soul knew it was me. And I broke everything in me to make it happen. When I labored to help someone that would never know I was one that helped them. When I helped them, they had a breakthrough. And the return from that, I've been chasing ever since. See, to me, no, it doesn't matter if anybody knows. It doesn't matter how I'm rated in anybody's eyes. When I do something, hardly anybody knows things I do anyway. But the return from that is an authentic work for someone. Can you imagine that? I found it there. That's where the return came from me. Your return may come from something else. Your return could come from sharing an anointed word with someone. Only you know what that return comes from. And it's something that it's a sensation nothing else will give you. You'll not have it unless you align with what the Lord has for you. But whatever it is, you get a return from it. It's what you've been yearning for all this time. And nothing can duplicate what you receive in return from it. The Lord will show you. Pay attention It won't be connected to pride. It won't be connected to these value systems in the world. It's going to be connected to holiness. In your life, there's something working against you. When you attempt to do something for the Lord, other elements will come by and try to make you void it before it ever happens. So if you can pay attention to that and say, now, don't never blame the person. Don't point to the person, that person's bad because they're doing that. Don't do that. That is, Satan is let loose out of his little holding pen to do that very thing. He will always try to void whatever you're doing for the Lord. So he's your greatest indication of your calling, because he will absolutely attempt to go against it. People would come to me and say, well, you got to help people. Now, if you were really helping people out, nobody ever knew about it, somebody came to you and said, you got to help people, you're liable to say, what? That's a challenge, right? But that's exactly what Satan wanted me to do, was to defend myself. That's what I learned to do. I learned to take a lot of dirt and keep going. That means if everybody saw me in a bad light, I would still do what the Lord called me to do with an upright heart. Do you know why? Because what I'm doing is authentic. It's not for show. It's authentic. Satan tries to put you in a position of pride, to put you in a position where people want you to get the credit. I don't listen to counsel like that, because I know that's not of the Lord. Not for me, that's not of the Lord. For me to get the credit? No. If anything, they ought to give Christ the credit, right? Not me. Some of you're going to need that credit for credibility, because the Lord has called you into different areas. And it's for some people, it's absolutely critical that people see what you do. He called many of us in many different directions with his holiness through true authenticity. Your authenticity with the Lord, you'll always find your calling. You'll get your calling. Kind of got off again, that's okay. But the Lord will do the same thing with Israel. So what does that mean? That means when you see Israel trampled underfoot, there are going to be a lot of people in the world that's hardened by what they see. If you understand God's process, if you understand his process, then say, thank you, Lord. Because whether people like the process or not, whether they curse it or bless it, God's blessings will still come through that process. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about this process or what anybody else tries against it. God's process will be completed, and it will produce exactly what it's destined to produce. Because through this purging, God will establish a kingdom here on this earth, in that place, in that very area. But did you happen to know that during your problem, leeches were exposed? You know what a leech is? A leech is somebody who's uncovered as somebody who will try to drain the very life out of you. And in your problem, leeches come on. It's kind of like if insects were prone to sickness, right? If a human being was sick, and that were the only reason a mosquito would not bite you, then in that moment of your trial, you would see a lot of mosquitoes fly away. They're not to be found. In your trial, when you're in trouble, those who are appointed to you, comparison to those who seek to drain you. Those who seek to drain you, you won't find them. They're gone. So that good friend that said, oh, I'm here for you, and they stirred up a lot of stuff, fun to be with, this, that, and the other, they're not going to be able to help you. This is one of the most important parts, especially for young folks who go through these problems. When you're having a problem in life and a person does not help you, do not alienate that person like they're just a piece of trash. That's an exposure, because there's a quality to us we should never have. You should never have a person around you simply because they can do something for you. That's worldly teaching. That's phony. I used to hear certain people say that. They would say, well, I don't want that person here because they can't, what can they do for me? They can't do anything for me. That's very disgusting. The story is about what you can do for everybody else, not what anybody can do for you. Let your dependency be upon the Most High, and you, in holiness, to what God is giving you understanding of. Don't use people like bags and cups and things of that nature. Don't see people as servants. Never seek to utilize anybody for what they can do for you, but you have it in your heart to do for others, because you will reap what you sow. And if you have sown mercy and kindness and sustenance in somebody's life, then guess what? In your time of turmoil, that's when you reap. You reap from the living God when you need it. But what have you sown? Because your time of necessity is on its way. America will not escape. Do you guys know that most of the storms in the world come right to America? Do you guys know that? That's not a very popular saying, is it? Nobody wants to hear that, but most of the storms come here. Why would they come here? I want you guys to look at America as the entirety of the world in a microcosm. A diversity of people and all the problems of the entirety of the world are right here. It means if God's word is true, then America's like many different nations packed into one little single place. Keep that in your minds. That's going to be very useful here shortly. It's like many different nations packed under one umbrella. That's what America is. It's diversity and differences of faith. All of God's principles are exacted upon this land almost continually. Remember that. There's some nations that are very dark, and they're right here in America. Witchcraft is very popular in America. The sale of Ouija boards went up. I think it was 1,000. Was it 1,000 or 2,000? Or was it 1,000% in the last 2 years? It went up 1,000. Chances are, one out of every 6 people has a Ouija board now. Somebody says weather warfare. No. Listen, in most cases, I'm like, let me ask you this. Why in the world would somebody make a weather weapon and attack themselves? Why would they do that? Do you know that most of the storms that we have here in America are destroying the military-industrial complex's infrastructure? I know that what you hear on the website may be popular. That doesn't make it true. We've been hurt right at the heart of many operations because of storms. In fact, they have started up repelling units to get storms to go away from certain places. California is important to the military-industrial complex. Texas is important to the military-industrial complex. And all these places where the importance of these underground infrastructure places are, you have bad weather. Why would they hit themselves? I know for a fact they're not hitting themselves. Capabilities that they don't. You're in a season now where people's bluff is going to be called. If you knew the conversation that took place during the first week of the Ukraine, you would just sit back and say, There's a lot of bragging, a lot of bluster going around, right? But here's a fact. When you start firing real weapons, that's when people start pulling out that's when they pull out the stops. That's when Zelensky started requesting tanks from other nations, ammunition and machinery from other nations. They quit bragging and everything else. At the onset of the war, they bragged. They said, we'll have this over in a week. Putin will never do so-and-so. Everybody left the Ukraine, and then Zelensky shut the borders and made everybody else stay. Then he called certain people back, drafting them into the military service. A lot of people didn't want to go over there. Sure, you had volunteers that were over here that saw, because they saw the propaganda, saw it as unfavorable. Then when they got over there, some people wanted to leave, but were not able to. We're talking about Americans, because there was no avenue to leave. So you're always going to deal with that sense of propaganda, but as tensions get higher, you're going to learn who's advanced and who's not. You're going to learn the truth about who has what. Because if America gets into a war with China, and we will, China is not going to play around like the U.S. does. The U.S., I know we have things mothballed. I know we have things in certain places that are fairly advanced, but it's only one of them. You may have one advanced device, 2 advanced devices, and they can't pull these things out early either. And everybody is not trained on these things. And chances are, truth be told, if something terrible happened, which you're going to see that test, because if some other worldly threat came in, and it will, you're going to see people pull out the stops. They're going to pull out everything they have, and it will be of zero effect. Hope you know that. Zero effect. There are even military elements training right now for an extraterrestrial attack. But if you read the Bible, you know what that's for. When people see God and his angels, when we have a celestial incursion, not from some ET, that's right in the Bible. People will see this, and they will seek to do battle, to defend themselves from what they see coming, and it's not going to work. That's part of the reality of what's coming. Not this delusionary thing that people are in. They don't know what's real and what's fake. For the most part, people don't. They see lights in the skies and craft going here and there, but they wink in and wink out of existence. There are certain incursions that take place, and people have paid a high price. People are snatched from their homes. Operations are done. All sorts of hormones are gathered from people. Hybrids are being produced. There's a laboratory, children, babies, things. They're all over the place. That's nothing new. People act like these things are so fanciful because in the drama machine, with the drama stew on the internet, people hype things up. Things that shouldn't be hyped up, they hype up. And things that should have a long, sober conversation, they treat it like a joke. All of them. We know that. We know all the nations will be subdued. So something very different is soon to take place. That's why hype and propaganda and all this stuff is going to fail people miserably. A closeness with the Lord in truth, and to really know his story, know what the Lord said. Not so much not what Mike said, but what the Lord said. Because if you know prophecy and it begins to unfold, the Lord can have you receive, or things will be revealed to you in line with this word. That's your base point, your starting point, to know what he initially wrote, to understand what he initially wrote. You may not be able to put everything together, but know it. But that strong delusion, my opinion is, it's been here. That strong delusion is the reality that people believe in.